We come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs blow. The hammer of the gods will drive our ships to new lands to fight the horde, singing and crying, Valhalla, I am coming. On we sweep with the threshing oar. I only go a bit of western shore. Welcome to another exciting episode of The Unrelenting Alchemist. And what I'm going to talk about today, because you know we're always talking about the topics you need to know in spiritualism, is workplace bullying. This is sort of a spiritual reflection on that through the lens of Hindu mysticism. So here's what happens. A friend of mine calls me. He works in a corrections environment, and he came to me seeking guidance about workplace bullying. And I told him, well, this is all too common. Now, mind you, my friend is no pushover. He's 6'5", pure muscle. He can hold his own in a fight. He's no pushover, not by anyone's standards. But you have to keep in mind that he can't just go around grabbing these losers that are doing these things to him and knock heads together and solve the problem. I mean, that would be all too easy. But that's not how real life works. If he reacts with force, he could be disciplined, he could lose his job, maybe even his pension. And so the coworkers that are bullying him are using the regimented structure of their workplace and the fact that certain things cannot be done to make his work life miserable. And I told him that dark entities do this all the time to try to derail people from their life's path, because we all have a mission. And dark entities will attack the flawed people, and the flawed people, now possessed with the spirit of those dark entities, will take it out on good guys like my friend. So I did offer him at a later time to meet for lunch and give him guidance and advice. But his story is all too common, and it's something that happens in a lot of workplaces across this country, let alone the world. Because what was once a peaceful environment, a dharmic field of purpose and livelihood, now became tainted by the energies of suffering, and thus bullying now enters the workplace. In the rhythm of karma, every soul we encounter presents us with an opportunity for learning, detachment, or transcendence. Yet when one is consistently met with hostility or manipulation by a colleague or superior, the emotional toll could be extremely profound. Fear, anxiety, helplessness. These are not just psychological reactions, they are energetic disturbances within the Manomaya Kosha, which is the mental sheath of the soul's subtle body. In Hindu understanding, a bully is not merely a person acting out of arrogance or cruelty. They are a jiva, an embodied soul, and they're entangled in the illusions of Maya and governed by the unresolved karmic samskaras, which are impressions. In this context, bullying is an expression of ahamkara, the ego principle that falsely identifies the self with power, control, and domination. When the ahamkara is wounded by shame in this way, rather than confront this inner pain, the person will externalize it. And so now they're going to project the aggression outwards on the people around them. They displace this inner torment onto others, often those they perceive as equal or subordinate, in a desperate attempt to remain unconscious of their own disquiet. Contrary to popular belief, most bullies are not people who suffer with low self-esteem necessarily. Rather, they're being gripped by a hubristic pride. Think of this as a tamasic distortion of self-worth rooted in a flat-out denial of their shadow. They didn't do the healing. Their actions are not born of humility, but from a compulsive need to evade shame. Instead of fixing the problem, they're running away from it. Thus, in the Hindu mystical view, shame, when acknowledged, can be a sacred fire that purifies the ego and leads one to viveka, which is discernment. But when shame is repressed, it calcifies into aggression and delusion. And that's when people look around to see if there's anybody they think they can take and project that onto them. So the workplace bully is not your enemy in the spiritual journey, though they may appear so through the lens of form. Here in the 3D, you only know that that is the person torturing you. But they become a mirror placed in your path, and they're testing your alignment with your own dharma. In other words, they're being used unwittingly as tools for those in the heavens who are seeking to see whether or not you can be made ignorant, you can be dominated, and you can be entrapped in karma. So ahimsa as the spiritual reversal of power here means that the response really should be nonviolence. But don't think of it as passive submission. It's active spiritual resistance because it's transmuting, like an alchemist, the harm to order. To embody ahimsa is to become unassailable because you are no longer playing in the ego's game of dominance and retaliation. Instead, what's happened now is you become a vessel of satya, the truth, and shakti, your own spiritual power. That is not a form of weakness. That is divine strategy. When the targeted soul refuses to mirror the bully's vibration, well, then a profound shift happens there. The bully, who's now thriving on reaction and energetic control, like an energy vampire, suddenly finds their hook slipping. When your prana does not bend to their manipulations, their own karmic energy has nowhere to go. It can't invade you, your boundaries are firm. So it's going to rebound, and it becomes a piercing reversal. This is how nonviolence turns the tables. Because they were seeking energetic disruption, and they feed on the chaos, they feed on your submission, they feed on your fear. When you respond with calm detachment, their energy has nowhere to go. The karma they project ricochets back into their own auric field and turns that into one of suffering. Think about the moral mirror. The stillness of ahimsa acts as a mirror to the bully's own violence. Without anyone to blame, they are forced to confront themselves, something they didn't want to do. This confrontation, while internal, is deeply destabilizing for the unawakened ego. If they would just deal with the problem, it wouldn't be so bad. But because they refuse to deal, it becomes their own personal torture. So this accelerates karma. And this means that you didn't retaliate, you elevated your vibration, while their negative actions causes them weight. The karma is like huge boulders around their ankles. And so karma cannot be avoided. It can never be denied. It will happen. You then can witness consciousness, because as others observed your dignified refusal to be degraded and refusal to play into the game, the bully is exposed. You never raised your voice, but your integrity shines so loudly that the cosmos itself bears witness. Dharma realigns, and the bully begins to feel the isolation of their false power. Even going to the people around them after a time, they may say, okay, that was cool a week ago, maybe a month ago, but this has been weeks and months, buddy. Like move on. Like we're moved on to different things. Obviously, he hasn't done anything. Just let it go, or she hasn't done anything. Let it go. So the thing is they were counting you to be a sensitive soul, and by sensitive, I don't mean one that's empathic or whatever. They were counting on you to be traumatized because they like to target the empaths, the old souls, the deeply introspective beings, because within them, they're profoundly aware of others. They understand suffering and pain. And so the question is this an empath that is secure or insecure? Because then, if the empath is insecure, this becomes self-blame and emotional collapse. So from a mystical perspective, self-attack is an internalized ahimsa that turns toxic. It's a violence of thought rather than deed. In the chakra system, it weakens the solar plexus, the manipura, and the heart chakra, the anahata, dimming the light of self-worth, creating openings for manipulation. See, bullies intuitively sense these energetic wounds of an inner child that's not healed in their targets, and they strike at those exact places, not by accident, but by resonance. This dynamic will arise because the bully is not attacking arbitrarily. They're projecting their own hidden shame onto the sensitive soul. And in this very sense, the scanning that takes place allows them to home in on the insecurities, and they hook onto that immediately. Once found, they exploit it through mockery, passive aggressiveness, subtle degradation. The result, the victim begins to question themselves, not the attacker. The karmic wheel begins to spin not just outwardly but inwardly as well. And so this may even lead further to withdrawal on behalf of the victim. Not one of putting up healthy boundaries, but of emotional retreat. And so you can see here why emotional retreat is the inferior answer and the boundaries would have been the strong answer. Because you don't want to have the person shutting down. You don't want them to believe that silence or invisibility will bring peace. They have every right to be visible. But when in mystical understanding, unchecked withdrawal can fracture the soul's relationship with its mission, leading to stagnation, depression, and loss of purpose. So, when I say nonviolence, I certainly don't mean inaction. To allow these effects to persist is to remain bound by the karma of another's unhealed ego, and you never want to do that. Don't let them come into your space. You need to leave that in their space. You have to assert your spiritual sovereignty. This is where the nonviolent response is still strong enough with firm boundaries to change the tide. You're on the path to Swardharma, one's personal truth, enacted in alignment with universal law. A spiritually sovereign being learns not to collapse inward under the weight of false shame, nor rise outward in violent retaliation, but rather they root in stillness and they act from a point of utmost clarity. You're not responsible for another's inability to regulate their own shadow. You're responsible for protecting your own inner sanctum, your prana, your clarity, your vision. You can't make others treat you nicely, but you can fortify yourself to the point where nothing that comes against you can affect you. So the spiritual warrior does not fight the bully's war. They transcend that war. When the victim withdraws their energy, the karma strikes the bully without mercy. In Hindu mysticism, karma is not just cause and effect, it is cosmic equilibrium. Divine intelligence always restores order across the soul's lifetimes. That divine intelligence will never forget. It does not hurry. It's all been recorded. What the bully thought they escaped is actually coming back like a boomerang, and it's going to move with devastating precision. There is perhaps no greater karmic weapon than the conscious disconnection of the victim from their abuser. When the one who has been targeted by a bully finally chooses to withdraw attention and to maintain their spiritual sovereignty, at that point, the energetic engagement is not what the bully thought it would be. This is not an act of avoidance, it's an invocation of a higher law. The soul chooses its liberation over entanglement, and in that very moment, something ancient and sacred is activated. The gods rise to avenge what the victim no longer needed to avenge themselves. Because you see, the bully thrives on energetic access, fear, shame. These are emotions the bully will feed on, but now they have nothing to feed. They're starving. Instead of draining like a parasite, they now have only but themselves to contend with, through the pain, through the outrage, through the defense, and their own self-doubt. You see, the cycle cannot continue at that point, because the wheel is broken. The energy exchange at this point fails, and so when the victim awakens, they cut that cord. And they're not doing so with hatred, but with clarity. A new frequency emerges for the victim. The gods of karma, of dharma, of truth, the very devas and the devas who uphold cosmic balance, begin to work. And Lord help that bully. So if you find yourself the target of unprovoked hostility at the workplace, remember this: you still get to command respect. Your very light is a disruption to someone still hiding in darkness. Their attack is not a mark of your weakness, but a sign of your potency, your strong boundaries, your standing up to their actions, being firm in the radiance of your being, knowing that you have an incredible self-worth and that no one can take that away from you. The bully may still think in some weird delusional way that they've won, walking away smugly, but the energy is bound by sacred mathematics. What is sent out must return, and when there is no longer a host, the parasite devours itself. In silence, the gods do their work. In stillness, the justice unfolds. The bully will fall, and let them fall. Not by your hand, but by their own. Karma never misses its mark. And you have no rage. You've only released. You let the divine take over. Because you have chosen to ascend. You have chosen to ride. So let karma do what it always does. And walk forward in grace, untouchable, boundaries intact, unshaken, masterful, and truly free. Thank you for joining me in this sacred hour. This has been another exciting episode of the Unrelenting Alchemist. Until next time, walk wisely, walk bravely, and when the dark calls, answer not with fear, but with light and fire.
And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you.